Hello, hello. Hi, welcome to this week's Hangout. Um, yeah, you're welcome. And today's going to be a good one. Today is all about stuff we've been cooking up. Um, yeah, and it's actually my first full week of coding. Um, last week was a bit on and off. I had kind of maybe like a day or two away from my keyboard, but yeah, this is probably the first week of this year that I've spent kind of like all the way behind my keyboard. So that's a good one. Um, just a little message for you guys. Welcome to today's Hangout. And yeah, just say hi as usual. If you have any comments, just drop them in. I'll be sure to read them. And yeah, let's just get on with it. So today's agenda is pretty straightforward. And funny enough, I did not write this down. I mean, I suck at preparing anyway. So, where do I even find a description on this? Anyway, okay, never mind. So we're just going to talk about stuff that we've done this week, like what's cooking, what's new. This week has been pretty fun for Leaf, because like there've been a lot of usability enhancements. And if you happen to check through the documentation, you would have probably found some things which are kind of new. Um, so an example is what was this? I think so with Blade. Actually, I think that's the first thing we can talk about here. So through the front end section under Leaf Blade, we have this new section for directives. So like there's this whole um, new directives. If you are coming from Laravel, you would probably find a lot of them familiar, not all of them, but um, yeah. So we just added things which are pretty common in Laravel. For instance, this CSRF here. Um, adjacent, I don't know if that's in Laravel, but that just felt like a fun thing I could add. So yeah. At Alpine too, I don't know if that's in Laravel, but hey, there's no harm in doing all of that stuff. So yeah, there are a bunch of new directives you can play around with, and basically they are just syntactic sugar. So it's not that you couldn't do all of these stuff before. You could, I mean, obviously, um, but then having them as directive just makes your life a lot easier. So yeah, just fun stuff to have. Um, yeah. So yeah, once again, just hey, hi Axio. Um, yeah. Along the way, if you have any comments, questions, anything, um just put them down in the comments and I'll read them out. So yeah, I think this was the first thing, but then there's a lot more. There's a lot of very tiny things. So as I mentioned, you could obviously do this stuff without the directives, but then they just make life easier. So there's a bunch of them listed here, and next week there'll be a bunch of new directives too you can play with. So we'll keep on adding more to the list. Okay. Um, uh, Discord chooses the worst times to update. Okay. Let me just go through GitHub. Yeah. So as I said, we had like a bunch of releases across like different modules. It wasn't just Blade. Blade was the first one though, but there's a lot more. I think MVC Core also had an update. Once again, very tiny update. Um, yeah, some of these were like pretty annoying to pull off, but nonetheless, they make life a lot easier. Um, okay, so this has to do with Leaf MVC stuff. So I think an easier way to show this would be to kind of look at what we have with Leaf MVC currently. Um, so what we have with Leaf MVC right now is basically, putting it in simple terms, it's kind of like a lightweight Laravel because there's a lot of stuff which kind of look similar to what Laravel offers, but in a lighter directory structure. So there were a few inconveniences, like for instance, with the current version of Leaf MVC, you have to a few things. There are a few things like when you want to sync your database models with LeafDB, you'll have to go to your public index and then sort of uncomment this line out and um, sometimes do a few other things here. But with this release of MVC Core, you basically don't need to do any of that stuff. If you're adding external libraries or you need to sync your database stuff together, which is usually done for you automatically if you're using LeafAuth or something else. Or if you want to use LeafDB together with your models, then you have to do that, unfortunately. But now you don't need to do any of that stuff. So that's what this release brought in. Easier preloaded MVC configuration, support for application provider, which I'll talk about later, automatically loading your libs, and then DB sync. So as I said, like very, very small, tiny changes, which you probably wouldn't even notice anyway. But then they just make your life a lot easier. So with this update, so the updates before sort of removed, how do I move this? Okay, there we go. Okay, so the updates before sort of removed the need for you to work with a storage folder, as you don't need to do anything with it. Config folder too, because most of the config files can be changed through your env like this, and that's something you see throughout. So like in most cases, you don't need to mess with any of the configuration files, but then of course, like every application is different, so that really depends on you. But now you pretty much don't have to touch the public folder as well. A few things, maybe like you want to add assets like images, CSS, all of that stuff, then you might need the public folder. But besides that, you don't need to mess with any PHP code, nothing like that. So that just makes life a lot easier because now all you need to worry about is the app folder. And the app folder here has gotten lighter, at least compared to 3.6, version 3.6, 3.7. Cool. So I think Leaf MVC also got a version 3.9. Sorry. I think got a version 3.9 if I remember right. Yeah, that was 3 days ago. Okay, so 3.9 and a version 3.10 would be published next week. So 3.9 brings in some things from version 4, which is being actively built right now. You can view this PR for all of the changes which are being made for version 4. But then it was a pretty cool idea to sort of take everything in version 4, which could be backported to version 3. So basically, that would just make migration from version 3 to version 4 a lot easier because you would have probably already seen all of the new stuff version 4 brings. So yeah, there's like all of this. You can scroll through. I think there are a few instructions on if you want to try version 4 out. But we'll talk about version 4 later. So yeah, for now, new console commands, better front-end tooling, Blade, and a few more things. Basically, just making your life easier. So no huge changes. Very tiny things. Very, very tiny things that you probably may not notice. But all of that was done to just make the process of building with Leaf MVC a lot easier. Can we expect Leaf ORM like Eloquent? So Eloquent, Laravel's Eloquent actually works with Leaf MVC, and it comes with it by default. So yes, short answer yes. You can already do that. And then Leaf also has Leaf DB. Let me put the documentation. We have Leaf DB. I don't know if you call Leaf DB an ORM. It's sort of like a mini query builder, but then for models and like object related stuff, Laravel's Eloquent has been ported to Leaf. So yeah, that works. So you can do pretty much what you do in Laravel over here. So yeah, so short answer, yes, you can do all of those stuff there. And the configuration is also pretty much the same as what you would do in Laravel database. Yeah, so you can have like your different database connections for different database types, and you can have multiple database connections too. So yeah, pretty much the same thing. Um, yeah, so you don't need to configure you just need to add your database connection credentials in your env file. Or I mean, you can also add them here, but that would kind of expose your credentials. So um, yeah, it's actually possible. It's possible. Okay. Um, da, 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 da. um, yeah. So basically, that's Leaf MVC version 3.9. Okay, Discord is open now. So I was looking for Discord because Discord is sort of tied to Leaf's GitHub. So every time I make a new release, it pops up over here. So I can just go through this instead of trying to remember what I did. Because honestly, I've forgotten 90% of what I did. Okay. So right, maybe pop this full. Okay. So that was MVC call. We talked about MVC call. We talked about Blade as well. Allo is Leaf MVC's CLI. So we added a few things. So that was part of like the front end enhancements that we talked about. I don't know if I can switch. I'm running Leaf MVC 4 over here. I don't want to stash my changes because I'm sort of testing something. But anyway, basically we added a gview command, which is like a generate view command, and it can generate like your front end template for you. Actually, let me just generate a new Leaf MVC application. Would be easier to show instead of just talking through it. So Leaf creates MVC. Actually, I have so many test applications. It's crazy. Okay. Update found. Right. Leaf CLI also go on updates. And it auto updates, as you can see here. So every time there's a new update, you actually don't need to do anything. And what happened this time? TTY mode. I've forgotten how I fixed that. I have totally forgotten how I fixed that. Yeah, right. Yeah. I really don't remember how I fixed this the last time I had this issue. I don't know if I can actually use this. Right. Okay. Okay, so I can go Leaf MVC. That's option 1. And currently uses version 3. So you can see MVC at version 3 because version 4 is not yet stable, obviously. So whenever I generate stuff, it will generate with version 3, not version 4. So, okay. What is going on here? What the heck is going on here? The env not found. That's kind of weird. That's actually weird. What's going on? Da, da, da. Actually, let me just cd into the application. Cd, what's the name of our application again? MVC show. And I will have to take some time to actually delete all of the dummy applications I've been creating. Okay, so quickly open up in VS Code, and now we have something to work with. What's the name of our .env package? I actually don't remember. I think it's lookout, lookout, env. Okay. Let me just quickly add that. I don't know why that's missing. Supposed to be in there. Okay, so I'll just leave install this guy. And okay, so we're good now. I can PHP leave serve. Wow, what the heck is going on here? Leaf install. I don't know if our dependencies actually installed. Nothing to install. Huh. Oh, wow. This is actually version 3. Okay. Leaf install MVC core. Nothing to install. But then we can't PHP leaf step. Hmm, that's new. Um, we're calling load console, which comes from leaf MVC core, and that's not found. Why? Okay, MVC core. What's the latest version? Version 1.11. Oh, that's kind of weird, because that's the exact version I have installed. MVC core at 1.10 maybe. Uh, what on earth is going on here? Composer JSON. It's kind of weird. MVC core, MVC core, SRC core. Wait, what is going on here? Bootstrap. Wait, actually, something's not right. It looks like all of the contents of the core file are not present in what we just installed. I think this is the first time I've ever run into an issue like this. MVC core at what version can I actually even install? Um, dev main maybe. Composer. Okay. Leaves MVC core dev main. Um, PHP leaf stuff. Okay. So that's weird. For some reason, whatever version we installed had none of this stuff. It was basically just an empty file, and that's weird. Okay, so for now, let's just say our problem is solved. The application is running. It looks like it's running. Okay, and now I have completely forgotten why I decided to run that in the first place. Okay, so I think we're talking about we're talking about this release and gview g templates, so we can kind of stop the server. I'll clear this up. Let's hope our console actually installed the right version. I have no idea how or why we were running whatever version that was. Okay, so g template g view looks like we're running the right version this time. So basically this allows you to create view files easily. So basically if you want to generate something like a new page, you can php leaf g view or g template something, and by default it uses blade, so it will generate a blade file for you. But if you're running something like inertia where you have react, so you can do something like php leaf I think it's like a view install command. I'll go like react. So this will set up react for us. it will set up Vite, and all of our front-end dependencies, everything we need. And okay, so that's done now. So if I PHP leaf serve, it will start our Vite server together with our PHP server. So when we run this, it gives us, basically we see the same thing, but then there's a new route added for us, which is a hello route, and that works from React. So basically there's a React rendered page, server-side rendering, that kind of just pops React in the front end using inertia. So basically that's what we have. And GView can also be used to generate views for React and view any other thing. So you can do something like PHP leaf, GView, and I've totally forgotten how to do this, but it's something like GView, whatever page you want to create, and then type by default is Blade, but we can go with something like JSX, and it creates it in relatively the right folder. Of course, you can always pop something like pages slash something like this, and you look inside pages and whatever you created is there. So basically, GView it just makes your life a bit easier. I don't know which you find easier, coming in here and sort of like creating a new JSX file or a view file and then adding the details in yourself, or starting from this, whichever is easier for you. You can stick with that. But now this is something you can do with the latest version of Leaf MVC. So that's pretty nice. So it's G templates, G view, whichever you feel comfortable using. I prefer G view, so that's usually what I go with. Okay. New comment. Have the minimal sleek dashboard for a life easier. Yeah, that's the goal here too. I basically just want something simple where I don't have to waste much time dealing with files and very annoying stuff. Okay. That's GView. Concurrent mode to serve command. I think you've already seen that. So if you have Vite installed, if like you have the Leaf Vite module over here, Leaf/Vite. If you have this installed and you've set up your Vite config and Leaf detects that, it would start two servers for you. So before, so if you check out the details given to you for the React stuff after you generate a React application, you see stuff here like you have to start a view dev server. That's like a different server for your view code. Sorry, for your Vite code. But now that's done for you. It runs, if it detects Vite, so over here you can see Vite detected, running Leaf server and Vite server concurrently. Yeah, basically that happens. So it only does this when it detects Vite. If you don't have Vite installed, it will just run one server for you. So now you don't need to have two separate windows. You can just do this and it works all the same. So that's the next thing, another little nicety. And now there's Civil 5 support. Before we had Civil 4 support, I think, and even that was a bit sketchy. But there's Civil 5 support now. So you can also PHP leaf, I think, view install --civil, and then that'll give you Civil 5. So the same way it kind of set up React for you, it'll do the same thing for Civil. So that's pretty cool too. So these are the new stuff, I guess. These are new. And then patched up stuff. So a couple of weeks ago we had first of all we had React 19 release, which kind of broke the React stuff up. That was patched up, but then we had Vite 6. Some things were requiring Vite 6, which wasn't supported. We had to fix that. And I think Vue 2 support was dropped or something like that. And I think Vue.js, Vue 3 required Vite 6 or something like that. So basically we had a few breakages with React and Vue, but they've been also fixed for now. We are still running inertia version 1, but version 2 was released late. Was it late last year? I think inertia v2. Um, I don't remember when this was. I think it was very late last year. This was the beta. This was 11th October for the beta, but the actual release was later. I think in December, if I remember right. But we don't support that yet. There's kind of like a lot of stuff to patch up if we want to support version 2 of inertia. So yeah, that's going to take a while. Probably after the Leaf MVC 4 release, because that's like where all of my bandwidth is right now, the Leaf MVC 4. So after that, we can probably have inertia 2 support. So yeah, that's pretty cool. Updated dummy components to match new Leaf versions. These are just scaffold stuff. Once again, like very small changes you probably wouldn't notice. Moved auth scaffold to scaffold auth. If you joined any of the previous streams, you probably saw me fight with this command. So every time I try to like pop up authentication, I would always do scaffold auth instead of auth scaffold, which kind of really didn't make sense because it made more sense to have like a scaffold namespace. So you could do other stuff like scaffold mail and scaffold any other thing needed to scaffold. So that's been changed. It's a very small change because most people will probably ever run this command once in their lifetime. So even if you're using an older version, probably wouldn't break anything. And once you upgrade, like type composer updates in your project, you are automatically on the latest version. So this is what you be using either way. Let's see, config mail. Config mail was a new. Okay, no, probably not. Definitely not new. That also got moved to the scaffold namespace. So there'll be more scaffold commands later, but for now we only have a scaffold auth and scaffold mail. There'll be more later. We removed Blade, Bear UI, and Vite from Vue install. So Vue install could be used for all kinds of stuff. We've seen Svelte, there's Vue, React, Tailwind. Before there was Blade, but that didn't really make much sense because you're already running Blade. And Vite comes with Leaf MVC by default, so that also made little sense. Bear UI, probably not necessary, probably not necessary at all. So these have been removed. I wouldn't call them breaking changes because they actually really don't break anything. All of these are, besides Bear UI, already in your application, so they're not breaking changes. They're actually really not breaking changes at all. Finally, config lib no longer edits. We kind of talked about that earlier. So if you have external libraries, you don't need to edit your public index. Yeah, basically, this was Allo version 2.3, which is what we are currently running in the latest version of Leaf MVC. So yeah, very small changes, but help a lot. Help make things run smoothly. So back to Discord, we've talked about MVC call, we've talked about Allo, Leaf CLI. That was also just a little update to have the concurrent server running. So no updates, no big update there. We've looked at Leaf MVC already. And then just yesterday, Leaf DB also got a new update. So that's also a very small update. It's a very tiny change and currently doesn't break anything. Currently doesn't even change the behavior of anything. It just adds a new function. So I think it will be super easy to actually demonstrate this. Sandbox.leafphp.dev, I think. I don't know if this actually even works anymore. Anyway, doesn't really matter. I don't need to run it. But before, you could have something like your database connect over here. And I mean, for smaller projects, this is pretty fine. It doesn't really do much to your application. But then the downside is you can have lots of routes, including some of them that don't actually use your database. But then it will still connect your database anyway before actually running those routes. So the version, what's this, 2.3 of LeafDB fixes this problem. It allows you to actually defer the database connection. So it's actually needed. So basically all you need to do is change this from connect to load, and it will, you don't need to change any other thing. So it works the same way as if you're actually connecting to your database, but then you just change that to load. And basically it does nothing. It doesn't connect to your database. It doesn't try to run any special database functions. But then if it's going through your code and it meets anywhere like a database query, or like database selects do something, at that point where it needs to actually run your query, it picks up wherever you put in here and then uses that to connect to your database. So that sort of like just defers the connection a bit. So a little bit of performance saved on routes that don't, actually require the database. But for other routes, it's pretty much the same. No real performance gain. So it's just like a tiny thing. The actual goal is in later versions, the regular connect function, sorry, the regular connect functions will actually behave this way. But since it's a new feature that wasn't exactly brief, um, we just had to put that to the side so people can actually use this if they want to, or keep connect, whichever works. It's all the same, just a little bit of performance save. Yeah, so that's what this does. Uh, Basically, just saves a bit of performance where you need it. So, um, yeah, basically, these were the major things that happened, the releases that happened this week. Um, but besides these, there was also a lot of work on version 4 of Leaf MVC. So if you're new here, I've sort of talked about this before, but if you're new here, um, Leaf MVC 4 is just an attempt to cut down on all of this. So this is version 3 of Leaf MVC. Version 4 cuts down on all of this. We try to take away as many files and as many folders and stuff as possible. Just so you don't, you're not hit with a lot at the same time. And then besides that, there are also a few things. So there was a lot of work on Leaf MVC 4 this week. And yeah, let me just show you a bit of what that looks like. So let me just close out all of these. So this version 3, we can close it out. Okay. By the way, if you have any questions, please put them down in the comments. I'll still check them out. Okay, let's go. Version 4. So version 4 is basically the same Leaf MVC. It's not a complete rewrite. It's basically the same version 3, but I don't know, stripped down. Stripped down is one way to put it, but then there's a lot more. Stripped down, new features, um, probably a bit more performance than version 3. Yeah, I guess. Okay, so this is what you have in version 4. Basically, this Leaf MVC folder. Sorry. You have your app folder, you have your public folder. It doesn't ship with a storage folder, but if anything needs a storage folder, it just creates it by itself. You see the config folder is not here. That's because, as I mentioned, even in version 3, you don't really need the config folder. You can delete it if you want to, but that seems like a breaking change to not have that. But version 4 doesn't ship with it at all. But if you run into a situation where you can't configure something using your environment file, you can always just PHP leave. What's that? I've actually forgotten what that is. I think it's like config publish. So you can publish any configuration file. For instance, you can publish a view configuration file. Actually, there's a typo. This should be config like this. Or if you want to, you can sort of publish all of the config. So this will put everything in there. So you can always get it back. Like that's the big thing. You can always get your normal folder structure back. So that's why it's not a complete rewrite. It's just something. It's still version 3, but made lighter. So a bunch of other folders were removed, like your helpers and all of those things. Your console, they are not really necessary because not everyone uses them. But then if you have a need for it, for instance, you want to add a custom console command, you can PHP leave G. I don't know if it's console or command. Must be command. Yeah, there we go. So you can generate a console command like this, and then it adds whatever directory it needs to add. And then you can also have your command immediately. So I think it was test like this. Yeah. So basically, that's Leaf MVC4. We're just kind of making everything as frictionless as possible. And then there are a few new things like a rewritten view engine, which I demoed last week. So I think I still have it here. I think I still have it here. So there's a Leaf MVC4 application I'm building. Um, yeah, right. So there's an example here where I'm using Blade, but then I'm kind of extending Blade. So the new view layer allows you to extend whatever view engine you're using, do stuff like this, and all of that. So it's just a more powerful view layer. Um, that's a breaking change, unfortunately. So that won't be popping up in Leaf MVC and Leaf MVC3. Um, Another breaking change, which I'm really happy about, is this schema files. So I think for like the past few weeks, I've not really had schema files working as expected. Even currently they are kind of, you know, sketchy, but we've made a lot of progress. So basically the idea behind schema files is instead of having kind of like the way we do right now in Leaf MVC and Laravel, Ruby on Rails, other frameworks, instead of having your database, I don't know what to call it, your database files spread across like factories, migrations, seeds, and all of that. Where in the case of migrations, you can probably even have like 5 to 6 migrations, different migrations for the same database table, which is pretty annoying. Schema files just replace all of that by allowing you have only one file per database table. So the idea here is I have a uses the YML file, and I can define all of my columns, everything. I can have my seeds in here, and that's pretty much it. If I need to maybe remove a database column, I can just take it off, and then schema files, Leaf will automatically compare this state of my schema file to the previous state of my database, and then automatically figure out what's different. So instead of doing something like, how in migrations you have to maybe add a new file for maybe add database table to users or something like that. In schema files, you don't need to do anything like that. You can just add something new like this. Oh my god. String like this, and that's it. Leaf will automatically figure out what's different instead of having you tell it what's different. Same thing for seeds. So you can kind of use Faker here. Obviously, this is not as powerful as you having to use just PHP, because with PHP you can pretty much do anything you want. So that's still something I'm kind of figuring out. But for the most basic use cases, schema files work. So I think I can actually just show you what this looks like. Okay. So for this, I will sort of reset my database. I think that's the first step. The first step will be to reset my database. So I'm connected to this MySQL database here. It has 2 tables, password resets and users. So I'm just going to run a quick db reset. So php leaf db reset. And this pretty much just resets everything and then runs fresh migrations. So I still have the tables here, but everything is empty. From this schema file here, I can choose to maybe generate 5 seeds. So that's like dummy data. I can choose how many I want to generate. Truncation shows whether I should clear the database before seeding, true or false, based on your preference. And then using Faker, you can generate fake data. So in this case, I'm generating a fake name, a fake email, generating a password here for password. I'm using this for my email verify that. So it's just a timestamp. And then I have a remember token true here. So that's another thing you can set to schema files. So there are some options like timestamps, but timestamps are true by default. So if I don't pass timestamps in here, schema files will just take that as true. So basically I can generate this. I can just do something like PHP leaf db seed. Okay, and what do we have here? Doesn't have a default value. Something doesn't have a default value, right? So I set this as a string and I didn't put that in here. So I can do something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. That was my bad. And then I can see it. And then we check in here and our seeds are there. We have 5 of them because we decided to use 5. And basically all of our data is in there with our something failed. Okay, so now this is where all of the fun stuff happens. We had something, actually I didn't test this before, so like there's a huge possibility this won't work anymore. Because I had to do like a lot of last minute changes. But basically if I PHP leaf db migrate, what I'm expecting is Leaf would be able to determine what's missing and then know it's a field I'm removing. Looks like it worked, but we don't know if it actually worked. So we check our database structure. So basically we are not supposed to see something. If we see something, there's something failed. Yeah, I don't see any something failed there. So that looks like it was taken off. We can browse our data and yeah, that's no longer there. So basically, that's the idea behind schema files. There's still like a very early prototype of it. But yeah, basically it does everything for you so you don't have to do it yourself. And everything is in one file. So like there's one file per database table instead of having multiple like multiple files per database table. That's the idea. So Leaf MVC4 is going to have this full schema system. I think the timeline for Leaf MVC4 is to have an alpha release next week. So yeah, by then you'd have like a more stable version of schema files to work with. But basically, that's what you have. And that's the idea behind schema files. So basically, Leaf automatically keeps track of everything going on. So you can always just check what's going on here. So you don't need to check yourself. You don't need to create multiple files to add a new column to a table or anything like that. It just does it for you. And since it keeps track of things, you can always roll back. So PHP leaf db rollback. I hope this works. So it's yeah, so you can always db rollback. And I don't know what change I've made. I think we're supposed to have our something filled back, but it doesn't look like we have our something filled back. So so yeah, that's probably not working correctly. But yeah, basically that's the idea. It's supposed to keep track of things for you. So you can always just like be able to roll back, be able to add new stuff and all of that. Let's see, there's a current state. So I probably need to roll back twice. So you can do that using step STEP, and in this case it's like 2 steps. But obviously we don't have a default value, so it will throw an error because of that null field. So technically it works. We just have a problem with our null field. So usually we would have something like this type. So you can also break it down and add extra options to it. So maybe like type string and then maybe a default value of 123, something like that. Or maybe it's a string. I don't know if YML is smart enough to actually read that. Okay. So we PHP leaf dv migrate. I think migrate. And hopefully, okay, that did not work. That still did not work. Um, add something that, yeah, probably looks like we have a problem with our default value. But yeah, basically that's the idea behind schema files. So we currently have seeding working pretty well. Database resets also working. DB rollbacks work. But then our current problem is the different algorithm. Basically being able to compare one database state to like a previous database state you had, and then checking what's changed, number one, and then constraints like these, making sure they all work correctly. I think that's pretty much the only thing left to fix with schema files. So once our different thing is done, we pretty much have schema files working. So I think that's like the biggest thing left with Leaf MVC. But yeah, besides that, we have a lot of other things that we are working towards. Integrations. I think last week I talked about the little billing interface I was working on for paper plane, where you can set categories that you want people to be able to purchase. And then it sets up the Stripe product and all of that stuff for you. So you don't need to do that yourself. And then we'll be having integrations with Sentry and a few other things people usually use. So yeah, there's a lot more cooking up in the next few weeks. Once Leaf MVC 4 is out, there will be a lot of packages and stuff like that coming up. So that's something you can actually look forward to. Yeah. Okay. So I think those are pretty much our updates for the week. That's what we've been up to for the week. But then there's, as I mentioned, a lot more popping up soon. And after our Leaf MVC4 alpha release, Paper Plane will also be available for pre-ordering. Paper Plane is this little what do you even call these stuff? Starter kits. It's a starter kit that comes with like all of the common things people build. Authentication, billing, mailing, and all of that stuff. And then it also comes with a bunch of additional front-end templates, page sections that you can choose from. In terms of features, yeah, there's pretty much everything you need to build, I don't know, anything. A little business for yourself, or if you're a freelancer, this is sort of like a good starting point. So there are fully working examples like e-commerce examples, products you can buy, stuff like that. So this will be available for pre-ordering maybe next week or in 2 weeks. So as I said before, just think of it as a way to support Leaf. Yeah, because we do need your help. So if you do have any way you want to help, you can just click on our support page and all of the details are down below. So yeah, that's pretty much Leaf for the week. So next week we are getting version 3.10 of Leaf MVC. We're getting a new release of Leaf Blade with more directives. And then we're getting an alpha version of Leaf MVC 4 that you can actually try for yourself. What else? I think for next week, those are the biggest things happening. There will not be any. I don't really see any real performance improvements Usability enhancements are ongoing for like literally the whole year. So just as with these tiny improvements that probably would barely make a difference to you guys, but then the whole thing is they will continue to stock up. So over time, Leaf and Leaf MVC will be like really, really easy to use. They already are, but they'll be much easier and more fun to use. So that's something you can look forward to. So yeah, basically that's it. Um, uh, I do not see any new comments here, so I'm just going to end this. I think we're 15 minutes in. Yeah, so I'm just going to end this here. Thanks for everyone who was able to join in, and yeah, happy weekend to you guys. I'll catch you in the next one, same time next week, Friday. Yeah, catch you guys.